The black Mercedes Maybach pulled up to the grand entrance of the Oakridge, one of New York's most elite luxury hotels. Valets stood ready in pressed uniforms, but none moved as the driver's door opened and a poised black woman stepped out. Ava Grant, 42, adjusted the lapel of her custom navy blue suit, slung her leather laptop bag over her shoulder, and surveyed the entrance with calm precision. Her heels clicked purposefully on the polished stone pavement as she approached the doors. Her hair, tied in a neat bun, framed her confident expression, sharp eyes, chin slightly lifted, not an ounce of hesitation. She didn't dress for impressions. She was the impression. Behind her walked no assistant, no bodyguard. She didn't need an entourage. She was the CEO of Civistech, a fast-growing cloud software empire that was making headlines. Today, she was in New York to finalize a $2.8 billion merger. One that would add the Oakridge Hotel Group to her expanding corporate network. But none of that mattered to the young white receptionist watching her from behind the glossy front desk. As Ava entered the marble lobby, her presence turned a few heads, not because of recognition, but because people didn't expect her to be someone. Especially not here. She approached the desk, pulling out a sleek, matte black titanium card and placing it gently on the counter. The receptionist barely glanced at her before asking, "Hi, are you here for catering or housekeeping? You can head around to the service entrance in the back." Ava's eyebrows rose slightly. "No," she said calmly. "I have a reservation. Ava Grant. Presidential suite." The receptionist blinked, then glanced down at the card. A short, awkward silence. Then she gave a small, involuntary laugh. A smirk tugged at her lips. "Right. You booked the presidential suite?" Ava didn't flinch. She had faced far worse than this. It wasn't just the laugh, it was the smirk, the disbelief, the assumption that a black woman standing alone in a power suit couldn't possibly belong at the top. It was familiar. Too familiar. Before Ava could respond, a white male manager approached from the side. "Is there a problem?" he asked, sensing the tension. "She claims she has the presidential suite," the receptionist said, still smiling like it was a joke. The manager took the black card and scanned the system. His face fell instantly. "Oh, Ms. Grant. I'm terribly sorry for the confusion. Of course, your room is ready. Let me." Ava raised one hand, silencing him. Her gaze shifted between the two of them, cold, precise, unreadable. "No need," she said. "You've told me all I need to know." The receptionist blinked, confused. The manager stammered. "Ms. Grant, please." But Ava had already turned around. Not in anger. In clarity. And what they didn't yet know, was that the hotel chain they worked for was about to lose $2.8 billion because of one laugh too many. Ava's heels echoed through the gleaming lobby as she walked away from the front desk, her expression unreadable. Not furious. Not flustered. Just done. Her silence said everything the receptionist didn't bother to learn. Behind her, the white manager scrambled to catch up. "Ms. Grant, please, this isn't who we are," he said, forcing a smile as though PR polish could erase humiliation. Ava stopped. Slowly. She turned her head, just enough to look him in the eyes. "It's exactly who you are," she replied. "You just didn't think I'd notice." He fell silent. The lobby was busy, tourists with suitcases, executives checking in, staff hurrying past, but now, all of it felt quieter. Like the building itself held its breath. The manager gestured back toward the desk. "We'll take care of the situation. She'll be disciplined." It was a misunderstanding. Ava raised a brow. "Do I look like someone confused about what just happened?" He didn't answer. She stepped closer, not threatening, but uncomfortably honest. "That young woman looked at me, and the first assumption she made wasn't CEO, or even guest. It was worker. And when I presented a card most people haven't even held, she laughed. Because in her world, black success still doesn't register." The manager's face flushed. She continued. "I didn't need a room. I needed respect. But clearly, that's not included in the presidential suite package." Ava turned again, phone already in hand. By the time she exited the hotel, her driver had opened the door. She slid in without a word, pulled the door closed, and made the call. "James," she said. Her assistant's voice crackled through. "Yes, ma'am." "Pull the Oakridge merger. Effective immediately." There was a stunned pause. "Wait, pull. That's a $2.8 billion deal. We just finalized terms last week." Ava looked out the window, back at the hotel entrance. The receptionist inside was laughing again, chatting with another employee like nothing had happened. "My dignity is not on sale," Ava said. "Not even for billions." "I'll handle it," James replied. And just like that, the deal was dead. Inside the hotel, no one knew what had just slipped through their fingers. The receptionist didn't know her smirk had cost her company more than the hotel had made in years. The manager didn't know his passive excuses would be studied in crisis management classes. But Ava knew. And she didn't need revenge. She had something stronger, the ability to walk away with power intact. By the time the Oakridge CEO received the call about the pull deal, it was too late. Ava had already blocked his number. She had made a decision, and that decision wasn't about money. It was about making a point without ever raising her voice. And the world was about to hear it loud and clear. The black Mercedes glided through Manhattan's early evening traffic, city lights reflecting off the glass as Ava sat quietly in the back seat. She stared out the window, hands folded around her phone, her expression calm, but behind that stillness was fire. This wasn't the first time she'd been humiliated. Not the first time someone had looked at her success and still only seen skin. But something about today, about that laugh, felt different. Not because it hurt more, but because she was done pretending it didn't. Her phone buzzed. An email notification. Subject, final sign-off, Oakridge merger urgent. Attached was the last document needed to complete the $2.8 billion acquisition of the Oakridge Hotel Group, ironically, the very chain whose employee had just laughed in her face. She stared at it for a moment. Then, with a single swipe, she deleted it. No explanation. No hesitation. Next, she called her legal counsel. "Angela," Ava said, her voice steady. "Terminate the Oakridge deal. Effective immediately." Angela's voice crackled in confusion. "Wait, terminate? The press conference is scheduled. The market." "I'm aware," Ava replied. "But I won't build with bricks made from disrespect. And I sure as hell won't reward it." Angela didn't argue. She knew Ava too well. By the time she ended the call, Ava's inbox was already filling with messages. The Oakridge CEO had reached out twice. Their head of public relations had emailed asking for a call to clarify today's unfortunate misunderstanding. Unfortunate misunderstanding. That was the phrase they always used when racism didn't wear a hood, when it dressed itself in politeness and brushed its hands off as accidents. Ava had heard it 1,000 times. But this time she held all the power. She didn't reply. She didn't explain. Instead, she opened her notes app and typed a single line. "Respect is the only currency that holds value everywhere. AG." It was quiet in the car. Outside, pedestrians rushed past storefronts and subway entrances. Inside, Ava sat like a storm, contained, but unforgettable. She glanced up at her driver. "Walter, take me home." "Yes, Ms. Grant." And just like that, she went back to her world, a world she had built, brick by brick, without ever needing to prove herself to anyone. Behind her, Oakridge's executive boardroom had just gone into crisis mode. A deal that took 6 months of negotiations, global marketing, legal work, and financial planning had just collapsed, over a laugh. A laugh that underestimated the wrong woman. Ava didn't break glass ceilings for applause. She did it to ensure that the next black woman checking into a 5-star hotel wouldn't have to pull out her resume just to be believed. And while the Oakridge team scrambled to do damage control, Ava calmly opened her laptop. She was already building something better. By morning, the headlines were everywhere. Black CEO walks away from $2.8 billion deal after being humiliated at hotel desk. Respect isn't negotiable, Ava Grant declares after viral incident. It started with a whisper, an anonymous leak from someone inside Oakridge's boardroom. A private Slack message that said, CEO Ava Grant pulled out. Over a front desk incident. Something about a black card. Within hours, someone posted a blurry phone recording from the lobby, Ava calmly placing her titanium card on the counter, the receptionist laughing, and her dignified exit. Then came the tweet from Ava herself. Just one sentence. Respect is the only currency that holds value everywhere. AG. The post exploded. In just 6 hours, it crossed 2 million likes. Celebrities, executives, athletes, and activists reposted it with comments like, Queen Energy, this is what leadership looks like, and, she didn't just walk away from the table, she flipped it. LinkedIn turned into a case study. Fortune 500 CEOs debated the ethics of partnership and image management. News anchors argued both sides. Some called Ava overreactive. Others called her revolutionary. But most of the world, they stood with her. Especially black professionals, who had their own stories of being second-guessed, side-eyed, or laughed at in lobbies, offices, airports, and boardrooms. For them, Ava's decision wasn't just bold, it was personal. Inside Oakridge, the leadership was in freefall. The receptionist was suspended indefinitely. A hasty public apology was issued, full of corporate buzzwords like diversity, inclusivity, and unfortunate miscommunication. But the damage was done. Stock dipped. Partner companies pulled out of smaller deals. Their PR firm quietly dropped them, citing misalignment of values. In contrast, Ava's company, Civis Tech, saw a surge in interest. Recruiters reported triple the applications overnight. VC firms sent her partnership offers without her even asking. Young entrepreneurs flooded her inbox, calling her a role model. But Ava stayed quiet. She didn't go on news shows. She didn't do interviews. She let the ripple speak for itself. What began as a personal moment of disrespect had grown into a national conversation about how racism often hides in plain sight, behind polite smirks and hotel desks, in boardrooms and coffee shops. And at the center of that storm stood Ava Grant. A black woman who said no. No to tolerance disguised as professionalism. No to billion-dollar deals that came at the cost of dignity. No to being quiet just to stay accepted. And that no did more than cancel a deal. It ignited a fire. Ava's strength didn't come from her net worth. It came from knowing that her worth had never been dependent on anyone's permission to be powerful. And while Oakridge scrambled to clean up their mess, Ava was already planning her next move. Because when a woman like her walks away, it doesn't end the conversation. It begins one. Ava Grant didn't return to the Oakridge Hotel. Not to forgive, not to revisit. She didn't need to. What she did return to was her mission, to build something better. Not just for herself, but for every black entrepreneur, leader, student, and professional who had ever been doubted at the door. Within a month of walking away from the $2.8 billion deal, Ava launched the Grant Access Fund, a $100 million initiative focused on investing in black-owned hospitality businesses, startups, and youth development programs. The slogan? You don't need a seat at their table when you can build your own. The response was overwhelming. Investors rushed in. Community leaders reached out. Her inbox was filled with stories, hundreds of them, from people who had experienced similar humiliations in places they were supposed to feel welcome. Black doctors questioned at conferences. Engineers mistaken for janitors. Executives told to wait outside. Ava read every one. And then, quietly and steadily, she began changing lives. She awarded the first grant to a 23-year-old black woman launching her own boutique hotel chain in Atlanta. The second went to a young man in Chicago turning an abandoned building into a co-working space for underserved tech startups. She partnered with HBCUs to provide mentorship and travel stipends for students pursuing leadership internships. Ava never needed the spotlight. She had seen what it did, how it consumed people. Her power was in moving without asking. The Oakridge Hotel, meanwhile, never recovered its image. Their board was reshuffled. Their CEO retired. But every time someone Googled them, Ava's story came up. It became a case study in corporate ethics at Harvard. It was quoted in leadership seminars, written about in Forbes, even taught in DEI training across industries. She didn't just walk away from a deal, she walked into history. And she didn't stop there. Months later, Ava delivered the keynote at a global women's leadership summit. She stood on a minimalist stage, dressed in a white blazer and soft blue slacks, her natural curls styled to perfection. She wasn't introduced with titles or net worths, just her name. That was enough. When asked what gave her the courage to walk away from that much money, Ava paused, then said, "We talk a lot about building wealth. But the real question is, what are you willing to walk away from to protect your worth? Because the world doesn't need more rich people. It needs more people who refuse to be bought." The audience rose to its feet. Not just for a woman who built an empire, but for a woman who reminded the world that black success isn't borrowed, it's earned. That sometimes, the most powerful move you can make is to leave the room.